You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning, it's January the 12th, and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Education and News. Good morning, Rev Cindy. How you doing?
Good morning, Al. I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Not doing too bad. I'm staying warm still, so, it's that time of year.
It is. It is. Yeah.
We got more snow yesterday.
Oh, we got ice yesterday.
Did you?
Mm.
And we got a little bit of that as well earlier in the day, and then it just turned into snow. So, more shoveling. Okay.
More shoveling. Yes.
Yeah.
Always shoveling this time of year.
That's right. Exactly. Anything new and exciting before we get into the news?
Well, I'm sure there's always something new and exciting, but I had my grandkids all weekend, so I was pretty low key.
Yeah. Actually, I think I saw a post saying something about you were literally worn right out.
Yeah, I'm knocked out by an 11-year-old and a 7-year-old. Boom.
Doesn't take much these days, eh? All right, before we get started, don't forget, hit the like button, subscribe button, and other than that, what do we say? Get started with the news story of the day. Here we go. What's up?
Yeah, coming to us from StratCan. Health Canada removes CBD NHP regulation proposal from forward regulatory plan.
Health Canada Forward Regulatory Plan for 2025-2027 no longer includes a proposal to regulate CBD products that would not require practitioner oversight. The agency, however, maintains that it continues to recognize the importance of this work. Now, Health Canada published its Forward Regulatory Plan in 2025-27 in December 2025, outlining planned regulatory actions, including specific initiatives such as updates for natural health products and ongoing reviews.
Well, the agency's previous FRPs for several years included a reference to a proposed approach to regulating health products containing CBD that would not require practitioner oversight. The latest version of the document no longer references this objective. The agency has been exploring the topic since 2018. Currently, Canadians can access CBD products through Canada's Cannabis for Medical Use program, which only allows online sales, or through non-medical recreational stores, where employees cannot discuss medical effects.
A media representative of Health Canada provided these comments in response to StratCan's question regarding the regulatory approach and the commitment to a pathway for authorizing Health Canada containing CBD. Quote says, while Health Canada's Forward Regulatory Plan 2025-2027 does not include a commitment to developing a proposed approach to the regulation of health products containing CBD that would not require practitioner oversight, the department recognizes the importance of this work. Now, Health Canada. Go ahead.
Health Canada published a discussion paper for consultation between March and June of 2025, exploring a regulatory pathway for the authorization of health products containing CBD that could be accessed without a prescription for human and animal use. The feedback confirmed that developing a policy and regulatory pathway would require significant and dedicated scientific, policy, and regulatory work. In this context, Health Canada is prioritizing its initiatives under the Government of Canada's Red Tape Review, including a commitment to reducing red tape for natural health products and non-prescription drugs.
Canadians can still access prescription drugs containing CBD as well as medical cannabis products with the authorization of their physician, as well as non-medical cannabis products that do not make health claims through a licensed cannabis store. So what I see this as? You got to look back a couple years ago, the review of the cannabis regulations, question 5.2. In that question, they asked, could cannabis stores replace the medical program for cannabis? And I'm thinking that they're thinking now, why should we go through and get these regulatory hurdles and scientific hurdles to have CBD available on store shelves when they can just go to the store and get it? Just go to the cannabis store and get it instead of going to the pharmacy to get it.
Yeah, but let me, and while I'm actually okay with that, although I think that, I should be able to walk in with my prescription and get a prescription price versus a recreational price. Because when I order from my licensed producer, I get medical prices. My prices are different than what you see in a legal store. Which, I think that, because we don't have to pay a lot of the surcharges and taxes, that $1 per gram and whatever. But here in Nova Scotia, if they do that, you're telling me that for my medicine, I have to walk through alcohol.
Correct.
As a recovered alcoholic going for their medicine, I have to walk through my addiction every time, at least once a month, if not more. And that's just disgusting. So I'm one of the ones that's all for the medical program, and I think it's extremely important. Over the years, I'm one of the ones, and I'm sorry if I'm babbling now, but I'm one of the ones that, we all watched what happened with, R versus Smith, 0-1, a massive win. And the government hasn't followed through. That was about medical patients, and the government has looked after recreational sales. Well, we can't make a lot of money here, so we're going to go over here and do it this way instead, where we can make a crap ton of money. And we've watched them make money hand over fist.
Another thing about the CHPs as well would be the fact that would have to have Health Canada admit that there's medical benefits of cannabis. And right now, Health Canada doesn't do that.
No. Yeah. So it's a big kerfuffle, but Owen Smith won this for us in the Supreme Court of Canada, and it's time that the Supreme Court of Canada enforced what Owen won. Which is easy access for patients.
Yeah, exactly. So, all righty, you ready for the next one?
I am.
All right, here we go. What's up?
Coming to us from Marijuana Moment, U.S. House passes bill protecting state medical cannabis laws and rejecting attempt to block Trump's rescheduling move.
The U.S. House of Representatives has approved a spending bill that would continue protecting state medical cannabis programs from federal intervention, while excluding a provision that previously advanced to block the Justice Department from rescheduling cannabis. Following bicameral negotiations on the appropriations package, the House advanced it in a 397 to a 28 vote on Thursday, sending it to the Senate for consideration.
Advocates and industry stakeholders were encouraged to see the rescheduling language stripped from the final deal after it had been approved by the House Appropriations Committee last year, as well as the preservation of a long-standing rider preventing DOJ from using its funds to interfere in state medical cannabis laws. The legislation that's now advancing to the Senate covers fiscal year 2026 spending for commerce, justice, science, and related agencies, interior, environment, and energy and water development.
This move comes weeks after President Donald Trump issued an executive order directing Attorney General Pam Bondi to expeditiously complete the process of moving cannabis to Schedule 1 from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 of Controlled Substances Act. And it says, here's the language of the provision advanced by the House but excluded from the latest agreement.
Section 607. None of the funds appropriated or otherwise made available by this act may be used to reschedule cannabis, as such term is defined in Section 102 of the Controlled Substances Act, or to remove cannabis from these schedules established under Section 202 of the Controlled Substances Act. GOP senators have separately tried to block the administration from rescheduling cannabis as part of a standalone bill filed in 2023, but that proposal did not receive a hearing or vote.
Meanwhile, on Monday, the DEA said a cannabis rescheduling appeal process remains pending despite Trump's executive order. The House-passed appropriations package also contains a rider that's been annually renewed since 2014, barring the Justice Department from using its funds to interfere in the implementation of state medical cannabis laws.
However, for reasons that are unclear, the rider that lists each state that would be protected excludes Nebraska.
Yeah. What?
Interesting. Yeah. Section 531. Yeah. None of the funds made available under this act to the Department of Justice may be used with respect to any of the states of Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, etc., etc., etc. Like all of them are listed here. I'm going to keep going down, and Wyoming, with respect to the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands, the Virginian Islands, Guam, Puerto Rico, to prevent any of them from implementing their own laws that authorize the use, distribution, possession, or cultivation of medical cannabis.
Missing from the latest version is an addition to that rider that the House previously included that would have authorized enhanced penalties for sales near schools and parks. That provision specifically stipulated that the Justice Department could still enforce a section of U.S. code that calls for increased penalties for distributing cannabis within 1,000 feet of an elementary school, a vocational school, college, playground, or public housing unit.
Okay. However, a joint explanatory statement, no pun intended, for the spending package also says Congress directs the department to appropriately enforce the Federal Drug-Free Zone Act to ensure that areas with young children, including schools and playgrounds, remain quote-unquote drug-free. That appears to be related to the report from the Senate committee that was released last year stating that the medical cannabis protection rider does not explicitly preclude U.S. attorneys from enforcing a federal statute on selling or manufacturing controlled substances in areas with young children, including schools and playgrounds.
It says that the bill also maintains protections for state industrial hemp research programs under the 2014 Farm Bill. It says Section 530, none of the funds made available by this act may be used in contravention of Section 7606 of the Agricultural Act of 2014 by the Department of Justice or the Drug Enforcement Administration. Advocates may welcome the exclusion of the rescheduling provision and inclusion of medical cannabis protections in the CJS bill, but many cannabis stakeholders have protested Trump's signing of a separate appropriations measure in November that includes provisions to ban most consumable hemp products.
However, when the president issued the cannabis rescheduling order last month, he also directed Congress to reevaluate that policy and ensure that people can continue to access full-spectrum CBD products. The federal agency will also be moving to cover such products for certain patients under Medicare and Medicaid.
There you go. Well, it's good to see that patients are still being protected within that language of that bill, which has been ongoing for like 11 years now. So why don't they just go ahead and legalize it completely? You know, like, and even though that he's done this, as we've read in other stories, even though he's done the executive order on, there's no guarantee that the final finding will, what the results will be. So.
No. And I mean, like, not that cannabis got it perfect, but we are a shining example of how much money the government can make if they utilize it recreationally.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. All righty. On to our next story. Here we go.
Yeah. Coming to us from MJ Biz Daily. Big banks still refusing cannabis despite Trump's cannabis rescheduling. It's not done yet, though.
No. President Donald Trump's December 18th order to reclassify cannabis under federal law won't resolve the marijuana industry's longstanding banking problems anytime soon. Without formal reclassification as a Schedule III drug, it's still too early to reconsider our position, and we will not change our stance and start offering marijuana businesses banking services a top executive at J.P. Morgan Chase and Co. said in a memo the New York Post reported on Friday.
Yeah. Trump's historic executive order directing Attorney General Pam Bondi to finalize a cannabis rescheduling process begun by former President Joe Biden in 2022, still pending. It's still not certain when cannabis could be formally downgraded to a Schedule 3, a distinction that would free the $32 billion cannabis industry from the federal tax burden in Internal Revenue Code Section 280E.
Schedule 3 is a designation for drugs with accepted medical value. According to the Post, that's another consideration for big banks. Bankers are arguing that Trump's executive order did not specifically address adult use cannabis and instead focused on medical cannabis, the Post reported. Clip that.
Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing, focusing on the medical side of cannabis. It just hit me as you were reading. If this happens, if they can get Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, giving it medical benefits, Health Canada is going to have to follow suit.
Well, that's the thing. We have this big program, but it doesn't recognize the medical end of it. So.
Yeah, but if the States gets on board with that, we're going to have to follow.
It'd be interesting to see if they change
it's going to be cool to watch, yeah. But according to one major investor, that attitude is annoying Trump. The industry is going to be banked whether they want to or not, because Trump wants it to be banked. Coming from Mark Kotis, who is a former hedge fund manager, and he told this to the Post. Trump hates the fact that the U.S. Pot companies employing U.S. workers paying U.S. taxes can't get listed on any exchange, but Canadian companies can, he added, according to the Post.
Banks have long been leery of offering basic services to cannabis businesses for fear of running afoul of federal money laundering rules or other enforcement. Though no bank or credit union has been punished in this way so far, most observers agree that Congress would need to pass a bill such as the Safer Banking Act, specifically protecting banks that chose to do business with state legal cannabis operators.
Rumors that Trump's December 18th executive order would also include banking protections turned out to be unfounded. Cannabis banking bills have passed a Democratic Party-controlled House of Representatives several times. We've reported on them every single time, but never advanced past an initial hearing in the Senate. Safer banking has gone nowhere since the Republicans took control of Congress.
But yet that fellow says that Trump is upset because the banking won't include it. As the report says, and we have reported, the Democrats have passed it several times.
Yeah.
So why doesn't Trump go ahead and do something about
it? It would be nice, but like, I mean, and I hate to hear anything that makes me go, oh, well, that's a good move on that on the head of the orange guy. But, like, I like a couple of things that have been said here. I like the fact that he's going to the medical side first.
Yeah,
Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 and the medical side first. I'm like, yeah. And then he wants the Safer Banking Act passed. And I agree with you. He should do more. But the fact that he's on the side of it is just like,
Yeah, and like the Republicans won't pass it. It's passed like 7 times. It's passed.
Yep.
To the Democrats. So while they're saying one thing, they can act, and they've refused to do it. Even when they're under the medical end of things, he still should do the banking.
Oh, at least for the medical side, absolutely.
Yeah. So why was it not even included in the executive order?
And Trump has done so many crazy things, and said, I'm going to go do this anyway, and then gone and done that anyway. Do this anyway.
Yeah.
Push it, force it. You say you're the president, and you're making all of these great decisions for the U.S. Well, do this one and help your people, right?
Yep, exactly. All right.
You want support? Legalize cannabis, because then you'll get over half of the population supporting you.
Yeah, well, it worked in Canada. So. All right, last story before we go to break.
Coming to us from the Psy Post. I'm really curious about this story. Intranasal 5-MeO DMT. So they're talking about, going in the nose. Effects peak within 15 minutes and lack strong visual, study finds.
Interesting. A study examining subjective experiences about intranasal application of 5-MeO-DMT found that its effects peak 8 to 15 minutes after application. Consciousness altering effects typically ended after 45 to 60 minutes, according to the research that has been published in scientific reports. Now, 5-MeO, I'm not going to read that. 5-MeO-DMT is a naturally occurring psychedelic compound belonging to the tryptamine class. It is found in certain plants and in the venom of the Inculus. Oh yeah, it's called the desert.
Incilius alvarius.
There we go. As well as produced synthetically.
Yeah, I only know this stuff because this is one of the medicines that I studied and worked with.
Right.
And I'll try to pronounce the whole name. 5-Meloxy-N-N-ditryptamine.
Okay.
It's a mouthful, and I'm only going to do it once. Compared to DMT, or what we commonly call NN-DMT to show the difference, the effects of 5-MeO-DMT are less visual but more immersive and abstract. Users report the experience as emotionally powerful. Oh, I missed a paragraph. Just a second. Let me go backwards. The substance is known for producing extremely intense and short-lasting altered states of consciousness. Its effects typically include profound changes in perception, a strong sense of ego dissolution, and altered awareness of time and self. Compared to NN-DMT, the effects of 5-MeO-DMT are less visual, but more immersive and abstract. Users report the experience as emotionally powerful and sometimes overwhelming. Research interest in 5-MeO-DMT has increased due to its potential, for its potential relevance for understanding consciousness. Yeah. I couldn't even say that word. That's crazy. And mental health. However, scientific evidence on its therapeutic effects and risks is still limited.
Study author Anna Ermakova and her colleagues wanted to understand the experience of individuals participating in a study that involved taking the 5-MeO-DMT intranasally. Nasally, there we go. To examine its pharmacological effects, the study focused on the psychoactive effects of 5-MeO-DMT, while the broader clinical trial enrolled 50 healthy volunteers. This specific study analyzed interviews with 40 participants aged 25 to 55 years. They had no prior experience of using psychedelics in their lifetime.
32 participants received doses of 5-MeO-DMT ranging from 1 milligram to 12 milligrams. Each participant was assigned a single dose. 8 participants received a placebo, i.e., for example, had intranasal application of a substance that did not contain 5-MeO-DMT and produced no effects. 5-MeO-DMT used in the study was in the form of a dry powder for intranasal application. In the dosing session, a participant would take his or her assigned dose and for up to 90 minutes after that provided ratings of overall subjective, medicine intensity.
As soon as possible after the dosing session, the participants took part in a guided interview discussing their psychedelics experiences. Study authors used natural language processing software and machine learning techniques to interpret transcripts of participants' interviews responses. Results show that psychedelic effects of 5-MeO-DMT started between 0 and 2 minutes after application. The effects peaked 8 to 15 minutes after intranasal application and gradually dissipated from 15 to 40 minutes. Some effects lingered for up to 90 in some participants. The peak was slightly longer with higher doses, and dissipation also lasted longer. Consciousness altering effects typically ended 45 to 60 minutes after the application.
While the effects lasted, participants reported alterations in sensory and emotional experiences, cognition, metacognition, arousal, and perceived relationship between self, other, and the environment. 5-MeO-DMT has a distinctive profile of subjective effects, relative to published reports of other psychedelics, with a short duration of action, relative lack of visual effects, stronger emotional or bodily experience, and the potential to elicit therapeutically relevant content, such as emotional breakthroughs and personal insights, study authors concluded.
The study sheds light on the psychoactive effects of 5-MeO-DMT. However, it should be noted that the number one participants in the study was too small to draw definitive conclusions on the differences between 5-MeO doses. The paper mapping the phenomenology of intranasal 5-MeO-DMT in psychoactive native healthy adults was authored by Anna Amarkova, Fiona Dunbar, Matthew, and Raphael. There you go.
Fiona was one of my teachers.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's amazing.
Good stuff. You never expect to see that, did you?
No, I was expecting to see, a name that I knew, to be honest. The place where I studied in Mexico, they've done a number, like they've worked with a lot of U.S. Ivy League universities for studies, and so these universities have traveled down to Tepoztlan and done some studies down there. So they're mapping what goes on in the brain while on 5-MeO, and I was actually expecting to see them at the end of it. But yeah, Fiona is amazing.
Good. This is
very smart people. Very
cool. Teaching. Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. You know what it is? It's time for us to take a break. Off we go. We'll be right back after we have our session. Got the vape pen right there. I'm sure Rev Cindy's got her doobie going. Oh, she's got her cartridge. All right. You're watching Psychedelics Cannabis Education and News. We're live here at paceradio.net and 420pace.ca.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. Rerolled Saturdays. Check it out. Nothing but non-stop cannabis and psychedelic programming. Find it at 420pace.ca.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more. We've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Are you looking to get your medical cannabis grow license? Limestone City Hydroponics can help patients through the process of obtaining their license to grow medical cannabis. What's that? You don't have a doctor? If you meet the medical criteria, Limestone City Hydroponics has a nurse practitioner who can assess and provide medical cannabis prescriptions. What are you waiting for? Contact Limestone City Hydroponics at limestonecityhydroponics.ca or call them at 613-548-0420.
PACE Radio is the People Advocating Cannabis Education Radio Network.
Sure
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
And you're live with Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News. We got 4 more stories to cover. And the first one is a bit of a eye-opener, I would say. I don't think that too many people were thinking about anything along this line. So why don't we bring it up and get started? Here we go.
Yeah, coming to us from Cannabis Business Times. The 2020 cannabis worker death kept from the public and the industry.
Wow. Sometimes it takes a tragic accident to invoke change. But when a man in his 20s who worked in it as an inventory specialist at a California cannabis processing facility collapsed on the job and died from work-related asthma in 2020, there were no news headlines. There was no viral posts on social media. There was no federal health agency reports to alert the rest of the U.S. cannabis industry. Details about the worker's death did not become public until a 4-state study was published in 2025.
I remember we reported on that study. In California, employers are required to report work-related fatalities immediately to the state's Division of Occupational Safety and Health, better known as Cal OSHA. Meanwhile, the California Department of Public Health monitors workplace health and safety risks, maintaining information on cases like work-related asthma. While the 2020 California worker's death represents the first known fatality related to new onset asthma in the U.S. cannabis industry, federal public health officials were never notified.
In 2022, it happened again, this time in Massachusetts. The 27-year-old True Love worker Lorna McMurray, and under similar circumstances. Both descendants worked around dried cannabis and did not have asthma before they started working in the industry, according to the public health officials from each state. I remember when that happened, and I went, whoa, hang on here, right? Yeah. Now, when McMurray died from cannabis-related occupational asthma health in January 2022 in Massachusetts, it was incorrectly reported as the first work-related asthma death in the U.S. cannabis industry, both by media outlets and national health experts.
In 2022, the first death attributed to occupational asthma in the U.S. cannabis production worker occurred in Massachusetts. This is coming from the Centers of Disease and Control Prevention, inaccurately concluded in November of 2023 report detailing McMurray's death. McMurray collapsed while filling pre-rolls with ground-up cannabis dust in 2 Leaves, now closed Massachusetts processing facility, suffering a life-threatening asthma attack that led to a cardiopulmonary arrest before EMS arrived, according to the CDC. She never regained consciousness and died in the hospital 3 days later, according to the CDC. She worked for True Leaf for roughly 7 months.
Wow. The CDC report says this case illustrates missed opportunities for prevention, including control of workplace exposures, medical surveillance, and treatment. Occupational allergic diseases, including asthma, are an emerging concern in the rapidly expanding U.S. cannabis industry. Now, despite the missed opportunities, it's often more difficult to prevent something that's presumably never happened before.
Oh,
But
it had happened before. Yeah. Cannabis Business Times recently learned that the California workers' death predated McMurray's by 2 years, according to 2 spokespersons with the CDPH. The California Department of Public Health cannot provide other details about the fatality except that it occurred in 2020. This is coming from Grant Boykin. The company has since changed its processes, he said, referring to the employer where the fatality occurred.
The year 2020 is a meaningful detail that hasn't been reported until now. Even CDPH researchers involved in the 4-state study published in 2025, which shed light on the 2020 facility, appeared unaware that the California's worker's death predated the Massachusetts worker's death. They referred to California's worker's death as the second fatality. The fatal case from California presented here is the second documented WRA fatality among U.S. cannabis workers known to the authors the time of this writing, the researchers wrote in the 2025 report, despite the California case representing the first known work-related asthma fatality.
Matt Cohen's, also with the CDPH communications team, denied CBT's public records request seeking the decedent's name, exact age, and place of work. Cohen said that the patient's right of confidentiality exempts the CDPH from disclosing information about the cannabis worker's death. The CDPH did not provide further explanation for not disclosing the place of work for the incident. Cohen's confirmed that the CDPH was investigating the death in 2024, 4 years after the incident, and has since closed the investigation.
CDPH is not investigating this workplace, Cohen says. During the 2024 visit to observe the work practices of the facility where the asthma death occurred, we concluded that the exposures likely experienced by the descendant were no longer happening at the workplace. Now, following the worker's death, the company discontinued its grinding and packaging operation according to the 4-state report published in 2025. Instead, dried products now arrive in sealed bags and are shipped to other companies to manufacture the products.
CBD made a public records request with OSHA in October and followed up with the state's Department of Industrial Relations in November. While DIR provided a tracking number for the request, the agency failed to meet a 10-day statutory deadline under Government Code 7922.535 to notify CBD about its determination of whether it had the requested records and if those records would be disclosed. In December, the DIR informed CBT that OSHA did not find any responsive records related to the request. CBT questioned if that meant that the cannabis company where the other worker died never reported the work-related death to Cal OSHA as required by state law, and asked, will Cal OSHA be investigating this apparent violation of state law?
The DIR never responded. Also in December, CBT asked the California Department of Cannabis Control if it was aware of the 2020 worker's death or of the CDPH's 2024 investigation into the workplace. The DCC was established in July of 2021. They say, no one recalls us taking any action against a licensee for a worker's death, according to spokesperson Jordan Traverso.
Nicole Niermeyer, an associate government program analyst with the DCC's Legal Affairs Division, told CBT in early December that the DCC identified potential responsive records and the DCC is preparing them for disclosure. On January 2nd, Niermeyer told CBT that after review, the DCC actually determined it does not process or maintain the records you have requested.
In other words, 3 California agencies, CDPH, Cal OSHA, and the DCC, have no records to provide the public on the 2020 worker's death, yet details were revealed in a 4-state study co-authored by the CDPH officials. Interesting. The publication's push to provide transparency to U.S. cannabis businesses and their workers comes after the 4-state study on work-related asthma in the cannabis industry was published in June of 2025 in the Journal of Occupational and Environmental Medicine. The study included findings from California, Massachusetts, Michigan, and Washington. The study's details the California's worker's death from 2020.
The man who who was a father to an infant when he passed away, grew up around cannabis, but he never had a breathing problem before working for the company, according to the study. He had recently been promoted to inventory specialist, a job that included opening and stirring large containers of dried flower to burp and aerate the product before packaging. About 100 feet away in the same warehouse, the dried cannabis was later ground up and packaged into pre-rolls. He had also spent time working in the packaging department before his promotion. He was also solely responsible for destroying product batches that had failed testing for mold, pesticides, and other harmful contaminants, according to the study. That's why.
Oh, yeah. After a few months of working at the company, the man developed new onset asthma, including shortness of breath and wheezing, according to the study. He self-medicated with his mother's Alberto inhaler. After a year and a half of working there, he took paternity leave for 6 weeks and his symptoms marked abated. When he returned to work, his symptoms returned. 2 months later, he collapsed at work with an asthma attack and died, according to the study. He was scheduled to see his mother's asthma physician the next week.
Well, this happened in 2020. These details were not made publicly available until the 2025 published study. That's terrible. Which was co-authored by public health officials in each of the 4 states and funded by the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, which is part of the CDC. CBT reached out to multiple co-authors from California. They either referred this publication to the CDPH communications offices or did not respond.
Yeah. Oh, this is a really long article I see here. I think we've got the gist of what's going on here. That this person, these people have died from asthma from working in the cannabis industry. As I mentioned earlier, I had heard about the lady passing, but I hadn't heard about the others. So, online, when I hear or read people comment about the fact, well, no one's ever died from cannabis before. I have to rephrase that to say no one has ever died from smoking cannabis before.
And I'm not sure that it was the cannabis. When they talk about these things, these people were they were working around pesticides. They had to destroy molds. So it's more than just the, and I'm sure the stickiness from cannabis in their lungs didn't help. But there's also chemicals getting in there that are sticking around with that.
Oh yeah. Like they mentioned they were destroying bad product. What kind of ventilation is in the facility? What kind of air respirators weren't they wearing? That they should have been wearing.
Yeah. So there's a lot of questions that pop up around that because, people that work with chemicals that clean cars and whatnot, like they're all given these humongous aerators to help keep their lungs healthy. And, I feel that that's especially working with the product that wasn't good, like that had developed mold or didn't flush its pesticides. If you're getting somebody to destroy that normally by burning, they should have one of those things too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I can understand the dust. There'd be a lot of dust being created in the air. A lot of dust. So, yeah. All righty. Going from that on to the next report. Here we go.
Coming to us from Ganjapreneur. 8% of Americans resolve to quit or reduce cannabis consumption in 2026.
A new study suggests that 8% of Americans resolved in the new year to quit or reduce the cannabis consumption. The survey conducted by Census-wide on behalf of nicotine pouch retailer Northerner found more than half of the respondents who said they wanted to change their cannabis habits believe it will improve their independence and flexibility. Another 47% believe changing their cannabis habits would make them feel more accomplished, and 40% thinking it would help them lead a more active lifestyle, improve their mental and emotional well-being.
Just 5% of 45 to 54-year-olds polled wanted to quit or reduce their cannabis consumption, compared to 13% of 21 to 24-year-olds and 12% of 24 to 34-year-olds. Double the number of men wanted to quit or reduce their cannabis consumption compared to women. About 10% of respondents said they wanted to quit or reduce their alcohol consumption, and about 12% said they wanted to quit or reduce their tobacco use. And the survey included 1,000 United States of America adults who were asked about their New Year's resolutions.
There you go.
Interesting.
People are going to consume, some people anyways, consume less cannabis. And I've seen that here in Canada where some people,
in different ways. I know a lot of people that have gone from strictly smoking to strictly edibles or tinctures or oils.
Yeah. Exactly. And there's one out there who's well known. I'm not going to mention the name just because of, the privacy end of things, that has posted that they have quit consuming cannabis while their child still consumes it for medical purposes, and that they've gained weight as well. So, and feeling better. So, No, that's some people find that.
Yep.
That's the goal, right? So,
Yep.
All right, on to the next story. Here we go.
Coming to us from cannabis.net. Microdosing versus macrodosing psychedelics, of course. What's the difference?
Yeah, what is the difference? Microdosing versus macrodosing psychedelics. Which situations calls for microdosing or macrodosing? Over the past few years, psychedelics have become part of mainstream consciousness.
But instead of psychedelics being used as recreational drugs, there's now a more serious appreciation for them as they are used for creativity, mental health, and personal growth. That said, there's also lots of room for using psychedelic medicines recreationally too, most especially with the decrease in alcohol consumption. As we see a shift in public attitudes and research on psychedelics, we are also noticing two different approaches to consuming them, microdosing and macrodosing. Both involve the same kinds of substances, but they represent two vastly different approaches to altered states of consciousness. They can also be applied to various psychedelics, including magic mushrooms, LSD, and peyote, just to name a few.
Macrodosing has gained popularity as a primary approach to taking psychedelics. It refers to taking tiny minute amounts of the medicine in doses so low that you don't actually induce hallucinations or cause major altered state of consciousness. The doses are often so low that the effects aren't obvious, but that would be the whole point. And individuals can still stay productive. On the other hand, macrodosing allows individuals to fully embrace the psychedelic experience, where microdosing means you stay below the threshold of altered states of consciousness. Macrodosing encourages you to cross it. Intentionally high doses are taken for emotional well-being, spiritual practices, psychological transformation, and to improve the overall perception of self.
There is a growing curiosity about both these approaches, which changes the conversation on how we think about self-exploration and mental health. Some people are looking for gentle hits, while others look for long-term breakthroughs. So in which scenario should you choose microdosing or macrodosing? You know, microdosing psychedelics involves taking around 5 to 10% of a full recreational dose.
It won't produce hallucinations or a trip, but instead induce a subtle effect that can help improve one's mood, emotional state, and cognitive ability. And over time, because microdosing is so subtle, it can be used frequently and easily integrated to everyday life since it enables you to stay functional. In fact, it's not uncommon for individuals to microdose regularly, such as every 3 days, giving the body ample time to reset. The benefits of microdosing include
improved mood, mental clarity, emotional balance or steadiness, sense of presence, better problem solving. Absolutely. Microdosing is subtle for these kinds of situations. Seeking to manage mild stress, depression, or anxiety, gentle emotional or mental support instead of breakthrough experiences. There is general curiosity about psychedelics, but one isn't ready to commit to a full-blown psychedelic experience. It can help enhance creativity and productivity, and it can help to support instead of disruption in one's lifestyle.
In addition, it's just as important to think about microdosing is not ideal. Microdosing isn't recommended if you already have a history of psychosis or if you are looking for dramatic results. It's not intended to be done every single day without going on a break, since this reduces its overall effectiveness. Remember that microdosing psychedelics allows you to be functional and work with reality instead of escaping it completely. Psychedelics are meant to be used intentionally and can expect to have good results if you use them intentionally instead of treating it as a shortcut to a breakthrough.
Macrodosing psychedelics means taking the full psychoactive dose for substances such as ayahuasca, psilocybin, or LSD. The doses for macrodose are high enough to result in a significant alteration in consciousness, perception, and sense of self. In addition, these trips usually last for several hours. Whereas microdosing can be integrated into daily life, Macrodosing is a commitment to the full experience and cannot be done several times a week. When one is about to undergo a macrodose, it must be approached thoughtfully and intentionally with a carefully curated environment, also known as set and setting.
A macrodose can heighten one's emotions, induce vivid sensory changes. A good healing session can even result in ego dissolution, shifts in identity, feeling interconnected and spiritually significant. The entire experience may not always be blissful. In fact, it may be challenging, such as in the case of ayahuasca, which is associated with vomiting and crying. This is why it's usually conducted in a ceremony or clinical context, under the guidance of an experienced professional or shaman. Afterwards, it can result in feeling profound. One must be careful with macrodosing since bad trips are possible. This can happen when macrodoses are conducted in unsafe settings or when inexperienced individuals take a high dose while processing unresolved emotional issues.
Macrodosing can be recommended when one is seeking deep emotional and mental healing. You feel stuck despite trying various conventional therapies, including counseling, medication, and various types of personal developmental work. You'd like to process deep-seated grief or address difficult patterns. One is prepared to work through reflection and integration after applying insights. Macrodosing is not recommended for individuals who have serious mood disorders or are going through unstable emotional states. The experience must not be treated casually or conducted without proper preparation.
For the conclusion, they say both microdosing and macrodosing have their own benefits and can be applied to a variety of different situations with various substances. Regardless of the differences, they are both extremely powerful ways of medicating with psychedelics. Together, they demonstrate just how versatile psychedelics are. They can be valuable tools when used correctly and responsibly, serving a complementary purpose for individuals seeking growth, mental health support, and the personal development. There you go. Good explanations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good article.
Yeah. A lot of people wouldn't know, because obviously psychedelics isn't out there as much as cannabis is, or even people who don't even use cannabis, they may not understand that. So it was good to have that explanation. All righty, last story of the day is ready, and here it goes.
Here we go. Coming to us from International Cannabis Business Conference, evaluating Malta's progress 4 years after cannabis legalization.
Malta made history in December of 2021 when it became the first European nation to adopt a national adult use cannabis legalization measure. The only countries globally that adopted a national recreational legalization measure before Malta were Uruguay in 2013 and Canada in 2018. Now that Malta has passed the 4th anniversary of adopting its national legalization measure, cannabis advocates in the European country and elsewhere are reflecting on what is working in Malta and what needs improving.
The country's adult use cannabis legalization model involves permitting people 18 years old and older to cultivate up to 4 plants in their private residence and possess up to 50 grams of cannabis for personal use. Unfortunately, national recreational cannabis sales are not permitted in Malta due to current European Union agreements that prohibit national adult use commerce. However, adults in Malta can join one of the nation's 22 licensed cultivation associations and source cannabis legally.
Arguably, the biggest measure of success of Malta's modernized cannabis policies permits to a reduction in consumers and patients being prosecuted for personal cannabis activity. Malta has experienced an over 80% reduction in cannabis court cases related to the simple cannabis possession since legalization, according to the recent report by the Times of Malta.
Yes. Still, as the author of the cited article, Andrew Bonello, touches on in his thoughtful piece for the Times of Malta, there are still examples of individuals being wrongly persecuted and subjected to enforcement for activity that logically should be permitted. How can cannabis consumers in Malta ever feel safe to live under a decriminalized regime if, in reality, the law continues to expose us all to so many what ifs and buts? The legal amendments introduced in 2025 by Rebecca Buttigieg, with the blessing of the authority of the responsible use of cannabis, seems to have completely departed from the harm reduction promises and discussions held with the same government in previous years.
Now, in this article, he describes being told by at least one official years ago that the cultivation and possession limits would increase over time and that ongoing enforcement practices against individuals are a threat to human rights. A major point of contention last year in Malta was the adoption of a new measure that allows authorities to levy a €235 fine in cases of excessive cannabis odor. What? A small-based cannabis prohibition policy is ripe for selective enforcement and is non-essential for many measures.
4 years after legalization was adopted in Malta, the results of the public policy change are mixed, which is true in every other jurisdiction that has adopted an adult use cannabis legalization measure. What is in place in Malta now is certainly better than the outright prohibition of all cannabis activity. However, as long as consumers have laws selectively enforced against them and a robust commerce system remains prohibited, the success of legalization in Malta will continue to be limited. More work needs to be done in Malta and in the EU level, and advocates need to keep fighting. And that's what we're doing.
That's right. Keep fighting. That's all you can do is keep speaking up. And let your government officials know that, hey, this doesn't work. Yeah. Now it did say that they were allowed 4 plants now for each person, but it said person. It didn't say per residence.
Yeah, they can have 4 plants. They can only have 50 grams. So what do you do with the other 600 grams that are coming off your plants?
Well, yeah, exactly. That's another problem. and is that possession in public, or is that including storage?
Yeah,
that 50 grams and you got 4 plants. Like, you can have a bad garden and still be over limits. Like
way over the limit. Yeah.
Exactly. So, alrighty. Other than that, we're done for the day. You got anything you want to say before we sign off?
Yeah, I just wanted to share that this coming Thursday at the Halifax Regional Library in the BMO room at, I think it starts at 6:30 p.m., Michael Garrison is standing up to speak about psychedelics and palliative care in Canada. Michael is a friend of mine. He is a registered nurse, and he works in palliative care, and he recently finished education with Vital, which is, a psychedelic facilitator training program. And he's excited to pursue how psychedelics and palliative care can work together. And he's getting up on Thursday and speaking about it. I'm super excited. I'm emceeing the event. It will be online. So I'd love to see you all there, virtually or in person.
Yeah, sounds good. For sure. Yeah. And, you just never know. I'll talk to you after the show. We'll see about getting that out to everybody. Help getting it out to everybody. So, all right. Other than that, we're done for today. That's your report. Thanks to our buds at the Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, Limestone City Hydroponics.ca, as well as at ease.ca. In closing, we'd like to say thank you for watching. And as always, don't forget to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.